Jessie Hayward was the daughter of Edward Walter Hayward, who farmed Hardley Hall Farm. She trained to be a nurse at the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital from 1906 to 1909, and her entry in the Nurses' Register is available in the Norfolk Record Office document ref NNH 114/1. It is known that she was nursing in Cambridge during Christmas 1916 before being cleared to work at a military hospital in Salonika, Greece. The nurses arrived at a camp in Maricel on their way to Salonika. After spending the night, Jessie, with 64 other nurses and matron, woke at 4 a.m. on the 3rd of May and got on the troop ship Transylvania to leave for Greece. They were accompanied by Japanese destroyers for safety from U-boats, but as Jessie explains, not all went to plan. 8:15 a.m. Breakfast, and all have a good meal, and no one feeling seasick. Our cabin has been tidied, beds made. My eiderdown looks so nice. 9 a.m. Up on deck, the sea so blue and just flecked with white foam here and there. The sun glorious, but a fresh breeze blowing. I have a chat with my Tommy in the lifeboat. He turns out to be Private Francis, my old patient last Christmas at Cambridge. He tells me he is on duty for 4 hours. Sister Swinford and I choose chairs and get our work and books and settle for the morning. Our VAD's, Voluntary Aid Detachment, come along and we all have a chat, and everything seems so nice. 10 a.m. Matron comes and insists all lifebelts are to be worn continually. We obey. We read the ship's newspaper, just one leaf typed. We read of our gains on the Western Front, also of HMS Arcadia being torpedoed. 10:15, a bang which those who heard will never forget. Sister S and I got up and said the ship has been struck. There is no panic, everyone goes to her allocated place. What white faces all around. A Scotch officer tightens my lifebelt. I have never seen him since, and we are to get in ladies first. How often I have read, but never expected to hear that cry. Private Francis helps me in, and I immediately find my feet wet, but this is a mere detail. Matron and 45 of us all pushed in, 3 Tommies, and then the boat is lowered. I really think this is the worst moment. The captain fires orders from the bridge. We hear there is no crew. Who will volunteer? 2 sailors come down the rope. Jack acts as skipper. We shall never forget him. Only a lad of 17, but how brave and splendid he was throughout. Our boat sets out, and the men from the ship give 3 cheers. I cannot look back. The sea seems quite rough. The sisters help with the oars until we are in sight of shore. My rowlock is broken, so I cannot row. I wish I could only do something, so one feels better. Throw the extra oar overboard. Some poor soul may be glad of it, Jack says. The boat seems full of people. Some poor girls very seasick. I feel pretty fit at this stage. You did not get me well at Cambridge for nothing, Sister Hayward. It seemed strange to hear my own name. Francis works hard, throws off his coat and even his lifebelt to work. Jack's smiling face at the rudder, cheering us all and shouting our orders. It seems a long way to shore. A second torpedo strikes our ship and an answering shot from the destroyer. The Transylvania seems to be going down on one side. Many boats are now launched all around us. Why don't they pick us up? Our boat is filling with water. We start bailing out, but it seems so fruitless and the waves are so big. We throw all sacks, coats, rugs, etc. overboard. Another bang, and HMS Transylvania is no more. The Jap destroyer rushes up. Has the submarine been struck? The sea seems alive, men clinging to oars, rafts and boats. They look sadly at our boat, and we are sinking. Everyone waves and cries for help. Jack signals with a sister's white cap. What can we do now? Says the second sailor. Jack shakes his head. His orders have ceased, and I notice his grave face, which has smiled before. Give me my lifebelt. Francis puts it on only just in time. I and all the sisters think we shall sink with the boat. I wonder what they will think at home. A lot flashes through my mind. My life has been a useless one. God help us all. Each wave we think must be the last. Another big wave and the boat is swamped, but somehow is still floating, and we are all hanging on. One VAD jumped out as she could swim and is clinging to an oar behind me. I am washed out and find myself clinging to an oar and a piece of rope. At first I felt very frightened and believe I was calling out. Francis is also washed out, and I still find I am next to him. He said, "Hold on, sister, don't be frightened." All around we see boats. Will no one pick us up? Hold on, hold tight, is the general cry. I can see some of those agonised faces now. After a time, I felt calmer, but my arms were aching, so I felt I must give in. Will they never come? Jack says, hold on, sister. A second boat is coming to pick us up. The waves seem so big, quite over my head. The salt water makes me feel so sick. I thought of home and all my dear ones. Life is sweet. It seems hours we were in the water. Some tried to get me back into the boat, but I could not. I could see and feel little now. A cheer from the distance, it seemed, and then someone said the destroyer was alongside. I thought my head was going to be knocked, and it was a pity to be killed after all the holding on. 2 hands came down, and I was pulled up first. My hair seemed caught. The rope ladder was there, and I got 1 foot on. I felt the shipboards under my feet and crowds of men all around me. All went black. I knew I was lying down, and someone was chafing my hands and face. A doctor was calling for brandy. It all seemed so far away. Sit up. You're all right. Drink this wine out of a bottle. Take her down below to the stokeroom. I was led down somehow, and oh, how nice to feel the warmth. 2 dear little Japs brought a towel, rubbed my hands. My teeth were chattering. I could not keep a limb still. After this, I seemed to come round, and I heard it was 1:30 p.m. People all round me were very sick, but I felt quite fit and chirpy again, and was able to laugh and talk. Oh, the relief! Many of the sisters were undressed, but I would not let them take my things off. Officers, Tommies, and sisters were all helping each other. It was a strange sight. Japs handed round wine, biscuits, and water. And to drink the latter, you put your mouth to the spout of the one kettle. I munched some dry biscuits and felt all the better. At last we reached Savona. After saying goodbye to our Japs, we went up on deck. The destroyer seemed full of men in khaki, or at least all sorts of bits of uniform, and the shore was crowded with Tommies. I wondered where they had come from, but heard later they were off the Transylvania and had been brought to shore sooner than us. I said goodbye to Francis on deck and have not seen him since. What a reception we have at Savona! The cheers! We felt quite heroines and had done nothing to deserve it. The women were crying. We must have looked weird, some wrapped in blankets, others in men's coats, and all with wet, draggled hair. I saved 2 hairpins only. An Italian took us in his car to the hospital. I had a Tommy with his head on my shoulder, feeling very bad, poor boy. At the hospital, an English lady met us to our joy, and after we had again had wine poured down our throats, Mrs. Rayner took us, again in cars, to her house, the Seamen's Institute. Here we took off our soaking garments. Jessie wrote up the diary on the 15th of May 1917 during her journey back to England. After being cleared fit for general service, she tried once again to get to the military hospital, arriving in Salonika on the 9th of September 1917. She later served at the 41st General Hospital as a Home Sister. After the war, she received the British War Medal, Victory Medal, and Territorial Force War Medal. She left nursing altogether in 1936.
This is a war diary by a member of the Upshur family from Sheringham in Norfolk. The author is not identified, but refers to father and mother, presumably Henry M. Upshur and Maria, to Harry and Nina, and to Lily, and is thus one of the other children of H. M. Upshur, probably Edith, who never married and who lived at Sheringham Hall. The diary starts with the writer recounting a tale of a Zeppelin raid on Sheringham on the 31st of January 1916, about a month earlier. Norfolk Record Office UPC 188642X2. February the 25th, 1916. This should have been begun August the 1st, 1914, but, like many other resolutions, is somewhat late in being carried out. Having given up all idea of keeping a war diary, the crowding in of events have compelled me to begin, though so late in the day. As possible, I intend to enter the daily happenings and to recall those which are past. No one is advised to read, but may be permitted to do so if they can and have plenty of time to waste. Perhaps the Zeppelin night makes a good landmark or war mark for which to begin. January the 31st, 1916. Feeling weary, tumbled onto my bed after a late lunch on return from hospital and slept like a log. Wake up, room rather unusually dark. Elizabeth came in. Is it tea time yet and time to get up? Tea time an hour after, and didn't you hear that horrid thing go over? There being only one horrid thing which goes over, I got out of bed, dressed, and went to the drawing room for cold tea. Father, mother and Lily quite normal conditions, I could see, having heard nothing. The servants had heard the Zeppelin and also seen it going quite low over the wood near the house. I made no remark, but in an hour's time heard a suspicious purring of engines, though not like the threshing machine noises of late 1950. I felt sure of Zepp machinery. Lil, father and I exchanged glances. The noise became more distant, seemed following the coast for a bit, then crash, bang, shake, a loud explosion. Every door and window in the house struggling to break free. Another and another, then louder. Mother thought first of a naval engagement, but we told her it was the Zeppelins. And one at first thought of our guns firing at it. Barford soon came along, and we knew that bombs were being hurled from the sky somewhere in Hull direction. A lull in the banging, then Harmon's quiet voice at the door asking, "What about the jewellery?" Very thoughtful, but what a comparative value jewellery seemed to have, when one felt what are those bombs doing as whose turn next. Another series of explosions, then quiet for the rest of the evening. We heard later on that they were in Bayfield Way.
This extract is taken from the diary of Judith Madeleine Ferrier, born 1902, daughter of R.F.E. Ferrier. Her and her family visited Paris in 1920 and decided to take part in a cook's tour to Vimy Ridge and other areas which saw heavy fighting during the First World War. Judith Ferrier and her family lived in Hemsby until the late 1930s, and she had strong interests in travel, photography and natural history. Some of these interests can be seen through her diaries, which often include pasted-in photographs, postcards and news cuttings. Wednesday, May 19th, 20th. We got up early, that is to say, the party which was going to do Cook's Tour, Arras, Lens, Vimy Ridge. The party consisted of Mary Armstrong, Linda, Heather, Lindsay, Betty, Nell and Jay and Elizabeth Oakeshott, and Lucy Tuckalt, and we were escorted by Mel Bed. We left the house at 7 a.m. and caught the train at the Gare du Nord at 8:30, where we were met by Cook's guide and the rest of the party, which consisted of 5 English and 3 French people. The journey as far as Longo was the same as that which we had passed through in coming from Boulogne. We arrived at Longo at about 10:15 and had lunch on the train. Quite a good one for the French tram bus, not a patch on the GER. We ought to have arrived at our destination Arras at 11:30, but something went wrong with our engine after we arrived at Albert, at which we stopped about 3/4 of an hour. That gave me a good opportunity of taking a photo of the cathedral, which is a pile of ruins. Albert was especially interesting to me as it was where Rick was so long. The town a pile of ruins, I did not see one house with all 4 walls standing. Leaving the town of Albert, we crawled, stopping every few minutes, through very deserted country which had once been woods, but which is now bare ground full of shell holes, with every now and then a few trunks of trees stripped of bark and branches, quite black as if struck by lightning, and here and there 1 or 2 ruined cottages, and lots of bared wire. We arrived at Arras at 12:30 instead of 11:30, and we packed into a Cook's charabanc. In going, we stopped first in the town of Arras, which in parts is very much ruined. We saw the Hotel De Ville. It was built about 1400 AD and was one of the finest in France. The ruins were lovely, CPC, just the kind of architecture I like best. I took a photo. We went slowly through the town, which was very ruined in parts. We then came out into a long road without a tree to be seen. Each side of the road, as far as one could see, was dry-looking grass. Old shell holes. I think the elevation was high, but it was more or less flat. Nell and I agreed that it might have been the salt marshes in dear old Norfolk. It was very easy to imagine the sea in the distance, and then I had the walk Mother and I took along the top of the cliffs to Palling on the never-to-be-forgotten day that we tried to find the source of the Fern. Well, St. Catherine's was pointed out to us, that is to say, a heap of bricks and dust. It is absolutely true to say that there was not one brick left on another. We went on till we got to Neuville St. Vast, where we stopped and went out over a dugout made by the Germans when they occupied Lens from 14 to 17. It was dug out of a chalk cliff 17 feet below the ground and to hold 2,000. 2,000! I would never have believed such a thing. We then looked at a Canadian cemetery, of which I took a photo. We then went on over Vimy Ridge, passing a brass put up to the Canadian artillery, which I have a photo given me. We arrived at Lens having passed lots of pillboxes and gun emplacements and also ruins. Before the war, Lens was a prosperous town with coal mines and about 30,000 inhabitants. Now, with the exception of one house newly built, and the Hotel De Ville, which had the pieces of 3 walls left, there is nothing 1 foot above the ground. I took a photo of a cafe, which was a cellar under the ground. In spite of this, there are 3,000 people who live like this under the ground or in wooden huts. It will be 10 years before they get the mines in working order. Where we stopped, there was a stall where I bought these PCs, and also a vase made out of a little shell with rifle bullets as feet, and Lens written on it, which I shall always value very much. We left Lens about 3:30 and motored back to Vimy Ridge, where we got out and walked up the very steep rise to the summit. It was very hard going, as it was riddled with shell holes and bared wire, with a good many very live shells about, of which one had to take a great care. Halfway up we passed a shrine, the crucifix of which, though knocked about, only fell down since the end of the war. I took a photo of it. After this it began to rain very hard, and as the hill was chalk, it became very slippery. The grass was very green here and long, and the birds were singing. It seemed hard to believe that it had cost us so much to win. It was taken by the Anzacs on April 19th, 1917. At the top we examined 2 concrete gun emplacements made by the Germans. I have a photo taken from Vimy Ridge, but as it was raining could not take one myself. From the top one could see for miles even when it was raining, so we could judge what an important spot it was. We started to descend and the rain stopped and the sun came out. We stopped halfway down to look at a German howitzer, of which I took a photo. We looked for souvenirs. We were not allowed to take any shells, as so many accidents had occurred from shells still being alive. I found an old German helmet, all bashed in and very dirty, which I gave to Nell, who wanted it very much, as I did not see how I was to get it home, and contented myself with an empty rifle bullet, which our guide agreed was quite safe, as it had no top and one could see it was empty inside. Lots of the others had some,